In 1988, when Child's Play hit theaters, a new kind of horror unfolded, one not contained to the screen. The story of a possessed doll named Chucky terrified audiences, but for some, it was more than just fiction. Urban legends began to swirl, feeding into deep-seated fears and superstitions, and somewhere on the outskirts of Chicago, a woman who remains unidentified to this day used that fear to spark something far more sinister. She called herself the Conductor of Souls, a figure who emerged in the shadows, whispering of a ritual that promised immortality. The doll, she claimed, wasn't just a vessel for evil. As shown in the movie, it was a doorway. She preached that if one were to perform a certain ritual of sacrifice, they could transcend their human form, becoming something eternal, something indestructible. For reasons still unclear, her promises found an audience. As the My Buddy doll rose in popularity, alongside the release of Child's Play, it became more than a toy. The doll, eerily similar to Chucky, was discovered repeatedly at crime scenes, a silent witness to the macabre. Groups of people began vanishing across the Midwest, all leaving behind journals filled with scribbled incantations and messages about the transfer their bodies were never found, at least not whole. Instead, remnants were discovered in abandoned houses and warehouses, their limbs severed in ways that suggested ritualistic dismemberment. The police found nothing concrete except for a series of audio recordings that surfaced over the months. These tapes were like a window into madness. In one of the most disturbing recordings, the woman's voice can be heard, low and soothing, like a preacher guiding her flock. You will live forever, but not as you are now. You must shed your earthly skin to pass through the veil. You must be willing to sacrifice suddenly. There is the unmistakable sound of screaming, bone-chilling and raw, followed by silence. Authorities believe these recordings captured the final moments of those who were led to their deaths, tricked into believing they were on the verge of something greater. Investigators scoured the recordings, trying to trace the origin of her voice, but every lead turned cold. The woman herself was never found, though she was said to have moved in cult-like circles, always staying just one step ahead. What made the case even more disturbing was that the My Buddy dolls became a symbol of the madness. Many of the recovered dolls were mutilated, with strange symbols carved into their faces and limbs. It was as if those who followed her believed the doll itself would become their new body. Some survivors, driven mad by the rituals they narrowly escaped, claimed to have felt their consciousness slipping away, as though they were being drawn into the cold, lifeless eyes of the dolls. The investigation continued for years, but no further clues ever surfaced. To this day, the case remains unsolved, an urban legend in its own right. Some believe the woman died long ago, a victim of her own twisted beliefs. Others insist she's still out there, waiting, still promising immortality to those desperate enough to believe her. But the one thing that keeps investigators and those who know the story awake at night are the dolls. Every so often, one turns up found in abandoned houses or left on a doorstep, its face carved in ways eerily reminiscent of the cult's ritual. The woman's voice, though only heard through the recordings, lingers in the minds of those who've listened. Eternity awaits her victim's screams, caught forever on tape, remind the world of a horror far worse than any movie.